So certainly somebody maybe hadn't been very much before, so you wanted to kind of get a lay of the land. So yeah, you circle overhead. It also lets anybody on the ground know that you're probably going to land there, so they kind of get out the way because most of them don't have a radio or anything. So you go overhead. Also there would be people on the runway because runway is kind of the biggest bit of land on like the whole village, big clear bit of land. They'd often just be using it to, I don't know, just play football or whatever. And so by circling, you kind of get them out the way. But it'll give you a little heads up as to how the terrain was all sloping, because with a lot of these ones, what happened is the runway would be kind of down the end of a valley, say slightly, so you might end up kind of getting quite low amongst the terrain, and so you get committed to landing quite far out. Like a lot of people would just ask me this kind of thing, like, "Oh, how'd you like? Why don't you just go around?" And it's like, well, if you're landing uphill, generally in front of you is high terrain, so sometimes you can just kind of quickly swip it around, but if it's in a valley, sometimes there's terrain all around you. And if you've got heavily laden aircraft, you're coming in with 900 kgs of cargo on board. The climb performance isn't so good. The terrain's climbing faster than that aircraft's able to outclimb. So there comes a point where you've sort of descended a little bit into a slight valley or something, and you can't outclimb any terrain around you, nor can you turn it around in the space available. So the only option is to land, basically. So
You're fully committed.
yeah, you fully commit to it. So, the biggest hazard was mostly the weather. Quite a lot of these, whilst you look at the YouTube pictures and everything, they're always like the nice sunny days because it looks pretty. But a lot of the days weren't nice and sunny. They were super cloudy with maybe rain halfway down the valley, or kind of fog rolling in up from the down below or whatever. And sort of picking your way through that safely, visually, because you don't. There's no instrument approaches, and you'd be crazy to try and land off some kind of GPS approach or something into one of these places. And so you just become acutely aware of your aircraft's performance and how much space you're going to need if you do want to bin it off. How far can I go into that valley before I have to bail out, or make the landing, one or other? You kind of just have to kind of make these decisions as you're going along, really.
If you're new to the show or haven't subscribed yet, click the like and subscribe button below as it helps with the algorithm, so you'll be notified when new and exciting episodes come out. All right, we have Matt Dearden on the podcast today. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Andrew.
No problem. The way I start off these, I'll do a little background on you, so the audience kind of has an idea, and then we'll get into it. So Matt Dearden is a bush pilot, instructor, and author of Flying from Shangri-La. He was also part of the TV series The Worst Place to Be a Pilot. He has spent 7 years flying in the remote jungles and mountains of Papua in Indonesia and 6 years flying the PBY Catalina, which is a flying boat and amphibious aircraft in the United Kingdom. So I guess, Matt, so give us a little bit, where'd you grow up? How'd you get into flying, etc.?
Yeah, sure. So it's kind of a second career for me, actually, flying. It was not what I originally planned on doing. I used to be a computer programmer, but actually I'm English originally, but I grew up in the Middle East, so kind of bit of an expat kid, I suppose. We bounced around quite a lot, kind of like quite an American upbringing, I suppose, because of that, because a lot of Americans kind of live in like Saudi and Abu Dhabi and places. But I was educated in the United Kingdom. I went to university there, and then kind of did all the IT stuff. And just sort of down the road from my office, there was an airfield, and it was sort of something I was kind of interested in. I thought, yeah, maybe I'll get like a private pilot license, which I kind of started to do, and realized it's really good fun. And kind of pursued the whole commercial career, thinking I'd get into the airlines or something like that. And then the big recession hit, like 2008, 2009. And so yeah, there were no jobs in Europe. There were like just no one was hiring anywhere. So cast the net further wide and heard about this little company called Susie in Indonesia, and applied. Kind of didn't think anything was going to happen, but yeah, they kind of took me on for an interview, and then I got all the way through, and yeah, and then I was brand new. I was on a one-way flight out to Indonesia with a 20 kg suitcase and no experience, and wondering what the hell was going to happen next, basically.
Yeah, that's definitely setting you up for a good adventure. So, what did your dad do that you kind of grew up around? I mean, Middle East, and I guess it sounds like almost like that's kind of U.S. expat military stomping grounds, right? All the bases and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there was a lot of military out there, but no, Dad was in oil. He was engineer in the oil refineries. He would look after the funnily enough, the gas turbine power generation side of stuff. So yeah, he's kind of knowledgeable on that sort of stuff. And yeah, we sort of what were we, Saudi Arabia, I suppose, when I was like pretty young, and then we moved to Abu Dhabi in like the 80s, and then Bahrain in the 90s. We were there for during the Gulf War and all that as well. So
That's
that was interesting times.
no, that that's definitely and what was your impression, and has that changed a bit, or what was it like then versus have you?
It's, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Again, it's quite a developing kind of part of the world, I suppose, and it was very much like just the expats were very much a minority in those days, I would say. I mean, I haven't really been back there that often. I went to Dubai like a few years ago now, I suppose, and yeah, I mean, when we were there in the 90s, it was nothing. Dubai didn't exist. Abu Dhabi. I mean, Abu Dhabi is still the capital of the UAE, but just the development and the expansion is just wild. It's and just the kind of diversity of people there is kind of like a Middle East and Singapore, I suppose, these days. So there's like people from all over the place, which kind of wasn't the case when I was there. Like when I was growing up, I should say, it was mostly just Americans and British people, really. But majority Americans, to be fair. A lot of US out there. I guess the oil connection, I suppose,
Yeah,
is the main one.
I think that's really for Americans. I mean, most Americans, they don't frequent the Middle East that much, and I mean, obviously, after September 11th, they kind of had everybody kind of scared and afraid, and all
Yeah.
these misconceptions a bit about the Middle East. So yeah, I mean, usually if you hear somebody's over in Saudi, it's usually something government related, or it's something military, or oil and gas kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Makes sense.
But the but yeah, so that's okay. So you started there, and then bouncing around and stuff like that, and then you end up going over to I guess it seems like that's a lot of people's kind of route, right? Is like, I mean, one, you had the '08 recession issue, but then in general, to get into the commercial airlines is not always the easiest, right? And so a lot of times people take a route of either the military route, which is one way to rack up hours and experience, but then the others is to, I guess, just try to rack up hours, right? And so that was that also part of going out to, Papua, was to like, "Hey, I can rack up hours and stuff like that to come back and do something commercial?"
Yeah. I mean, definitely, it was. It wasn't on the cards to kind of become a bush pilot. I suppose it was very much like the airlines are what I was kind of thinking I was wanting to do. And yeah, you sort of wanted 1,500 hours was kind of a number that everybody seems to pat around. And I thought, yeah, I'll go out for a couple of years. They offered me a job as a co-pilot on a Cessna Grand Caravans. I figured, I'd probably do that for like a couple of years, get the hours, and then come back and, work for one of the airlines here in Europe. Um, but funnily enough, actually, in Europe, the hour requirement's not so serious. You can get into the right seat of a big jet with very little experience nowadays. In fact, they almost prefer it that way, like cadet pilots. I know in the States it's quite different. They actually kind of want you to have quite a lot of experience. But in Europe, they'll take you on straight out of flying school, as long as you've got the right credentials, and then train you up. In fact, you can even do like multi-pilot licenses now, so you don't even really fly light aircraft. You pretty much do all your training straight on the simulators for the larger jets, and you're right seat of a 737 or something.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
it's
pretty
kind of
crazy.
different. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's,
because that was one of the things I noticed was I was like, "Oh, man," I was like, I mean, prep like, you figure, like, alright, people start off, they're flying a 152, a 172, like, they're getting their private pilot, like, they're doing super easy stuff, and then it's like you had guys that were only been flying not that long, and then you go out to probably some of the most difficult flying in the world. So that's like, how was that was that, like, kinda getting just thrown into the fire, or what was that like?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, they always say sort of the least experienced and the least paid jobs in aviation are always like the most dangerous and challenging ones, which I don't know, it's just always kind of been that way, I suppose. But yeah, like Susie was pretty good to be fair, because as I say, I started out as a co-pilot, so I had a few hours on the Caravan getting trained up on the, and it isn't that complicated an aircraft, just getting used to a turbine engine, I suppose. And then yeah, you're flying with a captain who's got experience. And they kind of moved you around Susie Air. So you spend a couple of months in like one part, and then they'd move you to somewhere else for a couple of months, and kind of like give you a little rounded experience of like all the different parts of Indonesia. But also for you to decide, as and when you get upgraded, where you might want to settle down as like a permanent base. And yeah, you kind of lean on that captain's experience, and then as time progressed, you get more and more experience. And then you kind of fly with like really junior captains. So obviously with the dynamic in the cockpit was still captain's captain, but it's just like you would help that kind of more junior captain then kind of get his or her experience up. And ultimately, yeah, you would get upgraded yourself, which would all assessed. It was all kind of followed an airline pattern. A lot of the SOPs, standard operating procedures, CCA used was kind of copied from Cathay Pacific actually.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was, yeah, it was actually pretty legit. But I mean, for me, things kind of changed in that regard because whilst I thought I wanted to do airliney stuff, when I went out, as I say, we moved around all the time. When I went out to Papua, which is like the really kind of remote, extreme part, I just got a real kick out of that kind of flying. Landing on these like tiny runways. Most of the time, I wasn't allowed to land it anyway because I was only with the co-pilot, so the captain would do the landings. But I was just like, damn, I want to come back here. This real cool. This is like way more interesting than flying airline stuff. Um, but like the other kind of turning point was this one particular aircraft, the Pilatus Porter, and that kind of changed it all really because I'd never seen these aircraft before. I'd heard of them, like I'd seen like Air America and stuff, which just kind of features those. And Susie had some of these, and they weren't multi-crew; they're single pilot aircraft, so just one pilot. I just went out and got the job done basically, and I thought that's pretty damn cool. I wouldn't mind a go at that one.
Yeah, I mean, are they basically the closest thing to like a Piper Cub, so to speak, but like a Piper Cub that can actually like has some carrying like capacity? Is that basically
Yeah, I mean it's basically just a big badass tail dragger. It's got the same Pratt and Whitney turboprop engine on the front of it, so it's got mega grunt. Um, and the airframe's huge. You stand up to a porter and it's the props are way up in the sky there. It's sort of like similar size to like P-51 Mustang or something like that. It's that kind of real big tail dragger size. And yeah, as you say, it can actually horse and load. With sort of on paper, the Porter will take about 850 kgs of load with enough fuel to kind of get you an hour or so somewhere and come back again with some reserves. You can probably load a bit more than that in it if you needed to. But yeah, it's just a proper useful utilitarian aircraft and not actually land in a couple hundred meters really. It was such a cool machine.
Yeah, I mean, that's the part that, like, is super impressive. I think for a lot of people, when you start off looking at, like, planes and stuff, and I was looking at Beechcrafts and looking at stuff like that, and, initially, when you're first looking, like, oh, it's you can maybe put 4 people in it or something like that, but you really can't after you put fuel and this and that, like,
Yeah.
the amount that it can carry. So the fact that, 1, that the planes were able to, 1, carry what they're able to carry, but then 2, it's like I said, it was like landing in such a short runway and needing such a short runway to take off, like that's like a pretty amazing compacted, plane.
Yeah, I mean, the Porter's like it's an interesting aircraft because it's very good at the one thing it does, which is basically, taking nearly a ton of cargo from somewhere, taking it like an hour away, landing somewhere really teeny, offloading it, and then flying back again. That's kind of what it does. Like they use it for parachuting and survey ops, but there's probably better aircraft than a lot of that kind of stuff. But if you literally have this particular mission brief, there's very few aircraft that kind of meet that brief. I think the only thing that's kind of come close in the modern days, like the Quest Kodiaks, which a lot of the missionary pilots use these days. But yeah, there's not really been much competition. The Caravan will take a bit more load, and it's a little bit faster, and obviously it's got autopilot and various other kind of fancy things, but it just won't get in and out of some of those smaller strips. And especially like a nosewheel aircraft, you've got to be a bit more on it to protect that kind of landing on those kind of strips. With the tail dragger configuration, it's just, got the prop so much higher in the air, you're very unlikely to cause any problems with that. And you just got more maneuverability because you kind of fling the tail around and just turn around in much tighter spots. And it's just a better configuration, really. But it's unfortunately it's kind of a dying breed. There's not really been any competition to the Porter.
Well, I guess thinking about it, I mean, what's making me think is like up in Canada, right? You got the beavers and the otters and stuff like that, the de Havens and stuff. And then obviously in Africa, like you said, you have, um, you know, but where else? I mean, is really bush flying kind of like you got Alaska and stuff like that, but it's definitely like a very niche thing. So
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, hence Pilatus is they stopped making them a few years ago because there's just no demand for it anymore. And sort of the airframes that are out there, as you say, like the Beavers and Porters and various other kind of niche aircraft, there's enough airframes still out there to kind of fulfill that need. Because you know what generally happens, at least what would happen in Papua, is an airstrip would be constructed somewhere super remote, either in a valley on a mountain or something. And then the porter would generally be the first aircraft to go in and out. If maybe a helicopter before that, but you know that gets expensive. So the porter would be kind of maybe the next thing, or at least the first fixed wing thing to go in there. And and if that route became more and more popular, then the runway may get expanded a little bit further, and then maybe something like a caravan can get in there. And then again, if it kind of got more and more popular, then potentially bringing in larger things like ATRs, twin turboprop type aircraft. At which point the porter becomes pointless. So it then goes and finds another small runway, and then so it goes on. And I suspect that kind of what happens in a lot of these sort of places these days is that these airframes are just kind of continuing that development as time goes on. And I guess ultimately we'll have no more tiny little runways. There'll be a point where communities can, go to a larger runway and use a larger aircraft. And then we need these little crazy things like porters and beavers and such like.
yeah, I know it's definitely it's one of the things like from yeah, we've both done a lot of traveling and stuff, and like I was just over beginning of the year over in the Philippines, and you got some of these amazing islands like Siargao and Siquijor and all these other ones. But like Siargao, like just like you're saying, I mean, they come in, it was a small airport, keeps it, not so commercial, island's pretty awesome. And then immediately they start talking about putting in like a full fledged to bring in a 737, et cetera. And so really it is kind of interesting how these like the porter is just kind of gets it started and then the process goes and then it kind of we don't really seem to ever just leave it as like a nice dirt little runway that gets in small amount of which was kind of my question is like so how did Susie get like so they get started? I think I saw like two planes or something like that, and now they've got almost 50. But like who's paying like I guess my curiosity is those flights have got to be just to run them, just to do each flight has got to be probably what 500,000 bucks or whatever. Like who's paying for, and that's not even counting all the supplies and the fuel and all that. Like who's paying for all that? Because it can't be these people out in the tribal regions, right?
No, no. So it's the kind of way the Susie, as you say, got started with like a couple of aircraft caravans initially. She's like a fishing magnate, I suppose. And so her specialty was like lobsters and prawns and these kind of shellfish. And she'd catch them on the what is it, the sort of west coast of Java. And then they used to get driven to Jakarta, which would be like a 10, 12 hour drive, which is like the main capital of Indonesia. And then from there, maybe they go on an aircraft and then they go fly to like Japan or other parts of Asia. But then, it's taken a couple of days to get them there. And her husband at the time was a German guy, and he was a pilot. And he said, "Well, why don't we like take a loan out and get an aircraft? And then we can fly the produce caught in the morning straight to Jakarta, and then by that evening, it's on the dinner plates in like Tokyo and places." And so that's kind of what started it. And then it got kind of boosted by the tsunamis, the Boxing Day tsunamis that hit Sumatra and sort of decimated that sort of part of Indonesia. And Susie volunteered these caravans to go and help with the aid effort. And so they took them up there and they were helping out. And the kind of governor of Sumatra was basically so impressed, and he said, "Well, look, once we've kind of all cleared this up, would you be interested in like providing a transport network? We'll fund it." So the government sort of funded this, what they call parentis flying, which kind of translates as like pioneering flights. And the whole concept is exactly that whole thing of connecting these larger cities and towns to these kind of smaller villages with these small runways and using something like a caravan to make those kind of flights with the government subsidizing it all. So
Gotcha.
the individual kind of villages and whatnot, they just pay a nominal fee, like $5 or something, just to kind of incentivize them, I suppose, to have to contribute in some regard. But yeah, the government's picking up the tab on most of it.
Gotcha. Okay, because that's where I was like, I'm trying to think of like, maybe some fruits or vegetables or something, but like I was like they can't be providing that much to pay for that stuff. I mean, they're um I mean, what do they? I mean, you obviously you got to meet a lot of these guys. What is it like for them living over in these tribal mountains?
Oh yeah, I mean, Papua is very much the most remote part of Indonesia. It's the kind of easternmost province. It's on the New Guinea island, which is kind of actually divided in half. So you've got the western side of this island, which is kind of part of Indonesia, and then on the eastern side, it's like a separate country, Papua New Guinea or PNG, people refer to it, and that's kind of independent. And you don't actually cross the boundary there; like they're kind of totally separate, even though it's the same island. Um, but these guys are like very different to the rest of Indonesia. Indonesia is kind of quite a developing country, and like the middle classes are up and coming, and they're taking more like vacations, and you can just sort of see the wealth kind of moving into the country there. But Papua is very different in that it's Indonesia kind of keeps a cap on it because there's a few kind of resources there which they're quite interested in, and so the local indigenous people before kind of the Western world and kind of came along, they just subsistence farmed. They would just live off the land and growing vegetables primarily, um, occasionally eating like birds or wild boar and this kind of thing, but mostly vegetarian and just sustained within their little villages. And then sort of along comes the aircraft and then starts linking these kind of towns into each other. And the development's been massive for these guys because obviously a lot of things have come in from abroad and influenced their life. I mean, before I think the first like discovery, for want of a better word, of kind of all these tribes was kind of in the 1920s. Funnily enough, with the Catalina actually.
Really?
So yeah, it's Catalina was actually the very first aircraft that landed on a lake, and this kind of anthropologist Archibald, I can't remember his first name. He was really interested in kind of exploring this part of the world, but before that, the local Papuans, they hadn't even invented like the wheel. They figured out fire, but yeah, like the wheel, that wasn't a thing. So they just didn't really travel very far. And so yeah, in that kind of what we are now, like 100 years later, it's been hugely different now. There's some of these people have learned to fly aircraft. They're actually pilots nowadays.
Really? Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, the kind of development is just absolutely insane when you can consider it. Within a few generations, they've gone from no wheels to flying airplanes.
Yeah, I don't know if you ever read, so you ever heard of Jared Diamond? He
No, I've not.
he wrote a really good book called Guns, Germs, and Steel, but one of the things, he was like a social anthropologist, and he spent a lot of time out in Papua New Guinea and Papua and stuff like that. And I mean, the amount of so I mean, one, there's like thousands of tribes, right? There's thousands of different languages, and then I mean, from my understanding, they don't do this as much anymore, but there still might be parts. But like, is there still like cannibalism and stuff? I mean, because they were known for that at least, right?
Yeah, I mean, especially down in the lowlands, it did go on until I mean, relatively recently. As far as I'm aware, it kind of stopped in like the 80s. I want to say somewhere around then, like probably a couple of generations ago. But yeah, I mean, it was a thing, and I think famously, and certainly in Papua, there was one of the missionaries. Kind of, he's a pilot nowadays, but I think one of his parents got eaten or something, or there was some kind of like story going on there. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it's certainly in recent enough history that it was known, amongst some of the kind of people working out there that it was potential. But yeah, not these days. It's I think all of the kind of the missionary influence out there has kind of educated them that this is maybe not the way to kind of survive, as it were. And so, yeah, it doesn't really happen these days.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, there was, and I think this was through the missionary work, was they had kind of discovered that there was this disease that they were getting called kuru. I don't know if that ever came up out, but they basically it's almost like the version of mad cow disease. So when mad cow disease is like when they were feeding the cows to the other cows as meal, but the brain is very toxic or whatever and causes this disease. And they were getting this from doing the cannibalism. And then so I believe there was a missionary and stuff like that, that they were like kind of really trying to educate them that like this was causing major issues and stuff like that. So
Yeah, I mean, like I have heard of that, but yeah, it kind of makes sense, I guess. 'Cause yeah, that's how it all kind of started back in. Yeah, I mean, obviously, Britain, we've had issues with mad cow in the past, but yeah, I don't think we were eating people.
no, 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 definitely not. Um, so I guess all right. So then, are you predominantly are all like is all your flights just on Papua? Or are you also flying out to Kalimantan, Sumatra, Sulawesi, any of them, or are they all focused primarily? And are you mainly in the lowlands? Are you up in the highlands? What's
So yeah, when I was there, like as I sort of said, as a co-pilot, you kind of moved around. So I got to fly the caravan at least in like Kalimantan and Sumatra, Java, and a little bit in Sulawesi, quite a bit in Timor actually, like NTT, around all kind of Flores Isles around that beautiful part of Indonesia actually. But it was Papua that where I kind of fell in love with just like the whole kind of chaos of it, the whole kind of edginess, the kind of final frontier of like civilization style, like just yeah, I got a real kick out of it, and so that's kind of where I focused everything, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to fly the Porter, and I wanted to fly it there specifically. So during my time as caravan, which was only 2 years on the caravan, I basically just kept hounding the chief pilot of the Pilatus fleet to say, "Hey, look, I really want to fly these things," and so he eventually gave me the shot at it. And but yeah, even like after that, like I couldn't go straight out to Papua because it's pretty challenging, pretty dangerous stuff. So I was initially based in northern Kalimantan, out of like Malinau. Tarakan up in the north there. And we used to kind of nickname it like Papua Light because I think the highest peak there was like 10,000 feet, something like that. So if you flew at 11,000, you wouldn't crash into anything. Whereas Papua, there's plenty of things that hit at 11,000 feet. Um,
yeah? I think the
and it
top
just,
16, right? It's I think 16.
yeah, yeah. Punjak Jaya is 16,000 snow capped. It's got a glacier on it, so it's always snow, which is also a wild thing to see when you're sort of taking off from the lowlands where it would be like 30 degrees plus Celsius, hot and sweaty, and then you just get up there and then there's snow everywhere, which is always quite an extreme contrast. But to kind of build the experience before going to Papua, yeah, flying in Kalimantan was quite good. Just got used to kind of handling the Porter because whilst you got kind of trained how to fly the thing, you need experience. You need to kind of build up. You need to screw it, make a few messes of the stuff, and just figure stuff out basically. And so I spent a year doing that up in Kalimantan before eventually going to Papua, and then yeah, that's kind of where the real crazy flying was, and mostly the Highlands. That's where I like flying. Up in Wamena and all along the kind of central spine there. There's like a whole load of just almost an unlimited number of airstrips. It was just incredible.
That's pretty amazing. So okay, so you were able to cut your teeth on basically the lowland area and stuff like that, where you can there's more forgiveness in making some errors and stuff like that. And then you get up into the highlands. So that's obviously where it gets starts to get much more exciting. So when you were first, I mean, obviously you're co-pilot and stuff like that. For how long were you a co-pilot up in doing up in the mountains and stuff like that in the highlands?
So I actually had really little experience because with the caravans, as a co-pilot, you moved around. So I had like, I guess it was like 4 months, I suppose. I probably must have spent total time as a co-pilot in Papua on the caravan, before then moving away and then got upgraded to captain. And then obviously wasn't going to Papua straight away. And so I kind of spent time in Sumatra mostly, and then Timor. I spent a lot of time in Timor, and Timor was quite fun. It's just a lot of island hopping with massive crosswinds because it's quite far south. So you end these kind of trade winds, and weirdly, all the runways were kind of perpendicular to these winds for whatever reason. So you just ended up landing caravan with like 35, 40 knot crosswinds, which was always
Jesus.
quite good fun. You got quite good at like just sticking a wheel down on the upwind side of the runway and just hoiking it down and just getting it on the ground.
I mean, what's your alignment on like crabbing over for that, right?
That's wild. Yeah, yeah. You'd be looking out the side window as it's coming down. It was, yeah, you got pretty slick with crosswinds. And I loved it actually. Timor was good fun, but obviously it was kind of a means to an end to get on the Porter, and then yeah, Porter single pilot from there on in. So once I was a couple of weeks training on the Porter, it was here's a plane, don't wreck it, and tried a few times, got close, but yeah, as I kind of said, that Kalimantan, the runways are a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, a little bit longer. It just kind of allowed you to kind of make a few screw-ups without causing yourself or anything else any damage before going out to Papua, where as soon as you're landing in mountains, that's like which one of the biggest differences just is that kind of combination of the density altitude. So you're just flying that a bit faster. You can just hear it and see it. You're flying at an airspeed of 60 knots, say, but like you can just see that you're landing at like 80 knots or something just because of that density altitude. And then you throw in like anabatic winds, which just give you these tailwinds to come in on as well. And then yeah, you're landing with pretty significant ground speed compared to if you're landing at sea level, which took some getting used to.
Yeah, I mean, because most of the time, pilots try to always fly. Yeah, I mean, if you have a runway, right, you typically, worst case, like you can come from either direction, right? So you always typically, oh, okay, I'll just go around from the other side, come in, into the wind, right? But
Yeah.
but for you, like, I mean, the mountain can't move, the runway can't move. So like, if the winds are at your back, like that's, I mean, that's like if most people wouldn't fly in that way, but you guys have to, and you have to do it on the edge of a cliff and a mountain.
Yeah, so I mean, we kind of mitigated it. So these kind of mountain ones, they were generally obviously upsloping, so you'd always be landing up hills basically. But because of that, of course, this is where the Anabatic wind's coming in because it's always going up a slope. Um, but first thing in the morning when the sun comes up, the winds are non-existent. There's barely any wind at all because the anabatic winds only cause once the sun starts heating the land up and reducing the density, and then that's how it kind of starts. So as long as you kind of got those ones out of the way first thing, so we would even get airborne at sunrise. It'd still be dark as you got airborne from kind of home base. And then you get out to these strips just at first light, and you do the really short, steep ones quickly because what sunrise? Sunrise is like 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And so probably by 10 o'clock, it's starting to get a bit windy. And a lot of those strips, you just don't want much of a tailwind. But as the day progressed, sometimes you go to the larger ones. There was some which are kind of stacked away with, maybe 600 meters or something. And you could go in with like 15 knot tailwind or something like that, depending. Um, and yeah, basically you just kind of planned your day accordingly, depending on where you were going to go and what you needed to get done. And sometimes you just have to sack it off and go, well, it's just got too windy too soon. So we'll try again tomorrow morning.
Yeah, and you guys, I mean, I think another thing that I guess is a bit different that you guys would do is, do you guys typically come in and do like a scouting? So like you'll kind of do a flyby, scope out and see, is my angle of attack correct? Like, is my flight path correct? Is it, or even is there people on the runway? Like, what's your approach initially coming in?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. If it's so certainly somebody maybe hadn't been very much before, so you wanted to kind of get a lay of the land. So yeah, you'd circle overhead. It also lets anybody on the ground know that you're probably going to land there, so they kind of get out the way because most of them don't have a radio or anything. So you go overhead, and also there would be people on the runway because runway is kind of the biggest bit of land on like the whole village, big clear bit of land. They'd often just be using it to, I don't know, just play football or whatever. And so by circling, you kind of get them out the way. But it'll give you a little heads up as to how the terrain was all sloping, because with a lot of these ones, what would happen is the runway would be kind of down the end of a valley, say slightly. So you might end up getting quite low amongst the terrain, and so you get committed to landing quite far out. Like a lot of people just ask me this kind of thing, like, "Oh, how'd you like? Why don't you just go around?" And it's like, well, if you're landing uphill, generally in front of you is high terrain. So sometimes you can just kind of quickly sweep it around, but if it's in a valley, sometimes there's terrain all around you. And if you've got heavily laden aircraft, you're coming in with 900 kgs of cargo on board. The climb performance isn't so good. And often the terrain's climbing faster than that aircraft's able to outclimb. So there comes a point where you've sort of descended a little bit into a slight valley or something, and you can't outclimb any terrain around you, nor can you turn it around in the space available. So you get the only option is to land, basically. So
You're fully committed.
yeah, you fully commit to it. So, you know, the biggest hazard was mostly the weather. Quite a lot of these, you know, whilst you look at the YouTube pictures and everything, they're always like the nice sunny days because it looks pretty. But a lot of the days weren't nice and sunny. They were super cloudy with maybe rain halfway down the valley, or kind of fog rolling in up from the down below or whatever. And sort of picking your way through that safely, visually, because you know you don't. There's no instrument approaches, and you'd be crazy to try and land off some kind of GPS approach or something into one of these places. And so you just become acutely aware of your aircraft's performance and how much space you're going to need if you do want to bin it off. You know, how far can I go into that valley before I have to bail out, or make the landing, one or other? You kind of just have to kind of make these decisions as you're going along, really.
Yeah, that was gonna be my other question was like, do you plan out like an exit plan of like, hey, if I come in on this runway, like, and I don't feel like I can make it, like, all right, I got to bank right, and I got to do it at this point. Do you kind of have like an exit plan, or it's really kind of once you've committed, that's it. Like, you got to land this thing no one way or the other.
Yeah, I mean, certainly for us, it was a bit more. Some airstrips did have kind of like calculated points. The missionaries have been there a lot longer, and so a lot of them calculated like the performance of the aircraft and gone into all the books and everything else. But the Pilatus guys are a little bit, well, sort of flattered with the aircraft because it's a very capable air machine. But it was a lot more kind of seat of the pants kind of. You just sort of knew how much performance you had on the aircraft and how much space you were gonna need. And so as you were coming down, you'd be like, yeah, okay, we can still turn around here if we need to. And then it'd be like, okay, right, no, we can't turn around anymore. We're just gonna have to land. So you'd get to that kind of point, and if the runway was there, you'd be like, cool, we'll carry on. And if you get to that point and you go, I can't really see, you just bin it off straight away. You just wouldn't push it in because chances are you're gonna end up in trouble. So yeah, you'd always just kind of err on that side of caution, basically, because bush flying is very much a matter of, knowing like when you can push it and when you might want to push it and when you absolutely shouldn't. And that was that line you had to tread the whole time, basically.
Yeah, and so actually, I guess that kind of ties in. You said it sounded like you were saying you've had some moments that kind of skirted the line. So what
I mean,
were
yeah.
what were a few of them, and I guess kind of what was your takeaway from them?
Yeah, I mean, every time, we used to call these, like a shaky tech log entry. So at the end of each flight, you kind of fill in the flight, details, you know, when you took off, when you landed, and everything else. Just as the engine was kind of cooling off, because when you shut it down, you kind of leave it for a minute or so just to let the turbine kind of chill out before turning it off. And that kind of minute or so, you just fill in the tech log, and occasionally you get what we'd call the shaky tech log entry, where you've got it in just by your skin of your teeth, and you're just like, um, and most of it for me personally was just, mostly on the ground, like the handling of the aircraft on these kind of wet, slippy airstrips. It can really catch you out sometimes. So a lot of the airstrips would have like these crowns, so the airstrip would be like kind of, concave, to help moisture just drain off the middle of it. But if you weren't slap bang in the middle of an airstrip, then that slope would pull you one side or the other. And yeah, controlling a big heavy tail wheel with a lot of momentum on that kind of terrain, can get quite interesting, especially with a tail wheel, because you need to be able to like break a wheel to like spin yourself around, and sometimes you just have no braking action, so you end up kind of sliding around a little bit, and yeah, getting close to ditches and trees and fence posts and whatever else. And I think I got a Pilatus stuck in a tree once. That was embarrassing. Just completely didn't realize how long the wing was, and just was trying to turn it around and just like, why is this thing not going around? And looked over and like everyone's waving at me. I'm just like, oh crap, the wing's like fully in the tree. um,
Can't take off with a tree.
no, so yeah, but yeah, in terms of like, proper scary stuff, I suppose, like pilot incapacitation, that's like pretty much the worst case scenario, and I had that once.
Wait, you did? I mean, and that was the thing. I was like, a lot of these others, you have a co-pilot, but with the Pilatus, you don't. You're just
That's
you.
it.
So that was
That's
one of the
just you.
things that crossed my mind is what did you black out or something or
Yeah, well, I mean, how I like it's a whole chapter in the book actually I wrote because it was just like such a harrowing experience. And yeah, I basically just had chronic food poisoning, and with the vomiting and nausea and everything else that kind of comes along with this thing. But combined with the fact I was at 13,000 feet in a cloud with mountain just underneath me, wondering how the hell I'm going to keep this plane flying with like a good 30-minute flight ahead of me to try and get it back somewhere safely, and just somehow hang in there and not pass out because like just the mental and like physical um kind of trauma of like just vomiting continuously and just like it's exhausting, and the pain and the suffering of that experience, like, you just want to close your eyes and go to sleep, because you could just it'll all stop, but like if you do that then you're dead. So somehow I just kind of battled on for like half an hour and got the aircraft into what was Tamika, our home base, which is quite a big international airport actually. And I was at that point so weak and fatigued I couldn't even speak on the radio, so I just went busting in, wasn't talking to them, and just smacked it down on the runway, and then I blacked out. Um, like I just hang in there just enough to get it on the ground, and then I was out. And the next thing I remember, like, was people like I could feel people lifting me out of the cockpit, and then I was like in a car, and then I kind of came to in like a hospital, and like with lines and stuff in me, and yeah, it was wild, absolutely wild.
Holy cow. Wow. I mean, that's like, I mean, and it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of focus to, and so then when you're feeling that ill, yeah, that's wow, that's crazy. And the fact that you landed it and then like,
Yeah,
man,
yeah. It's like it's I don't know. I still reflect on it as like I guess my like will to live's pretty strong because like yeah, that time it was just the most unbearable thing. Like honestly, just wanted to close my eyes. It was so horrible. But somehow just hung in there. I don't know how, to be honest. I still don't know. Even like when I was writing it for the book, people were like, "Oh my God!" Like, because I hadn't told many people that story. Like it happened, and like a handful of people knew about it. Like I didn't tell my mom or anybody like that. And like the first she knew of it was actually proofreading the book, and she called me up like immediately and was just like crying. She's like, "Oh my God! Like I can't believe you didn't." I was just like, "Well, he wasn't going to mention it to you, was I?"
yeah, no, it's good to keep it. Some things are better not said to moms.
Yeah.
My
Mhm.
mom's kind of, she got into the habit of just being like, all right, tell me when you come back. Like, she's like, I don't
Yeah.
really want to know beforehand or while you're there kind of deal. Just let me know when you come back.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
so I guess also like, I mean, I would imagine, especially your first time when you were, I guess what in the left seat kind of deal and you're just piloting, I guess, and you don't have anybody with you. Um, Kind of coming in, how were the nerves? And especially like when like you're committing, like just one of those where did you get like kind of in the zone where you're just like, that's it, committed, like let's just execute? Or were you still pretty shaky and nervous?
Yeah, it kind of varied. Like obviously, as you gained more experience, you got more confident with this sort of stuff. And generally, like the way I used to do it would be obviously you fly to like a handful of like regular airstrips that were of kind of varying difficulty from kind of shorter, steeper ones to kind of slightly less steep, longer kind of ones. And so you kind of had this kind of foundation of experience which you kind of leaned on. Um, and I always remember actually when I first learned to fly the Pilatus, my instructor, a Swiss guy called Sven, he kind of explained to me, he's like, okay, so like this is like your box of experience. Like just fly within this, okay, and just stay there for like a little bit. And then as you start to get more comfortable with the aircraft, like start coming to the edges, like and just push it a bit each time. Because each time you push it, the box gets a little bit bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Because he said, if you don't push it, if you just stay here within this box, one day something will happen out here. And if you haven't expanded that box, you're not going to be equipped to deal with that scenario. So I kind of took that and did exactly that. I would just kind of, just push it a little bit here and there, maybe go to a little airstrip which I hadn't been to, just on an empty leg kind of thing on the way home. Just, well, let's just, try going in this one. And try like curved approaches and like maybe just coming in a bit faster than I should have done just to see how it reacted and all this kind of stuff. Just kind of expanding my own experience, I suppose, so that I could equip myself later on as I went to the more challenging airstrips. And yes, what was your question again?
Well, no, I mean, I guess it's kind of basically like you're describing it is that like, you know, preparing yourself. I mean, most people I would think going in their first time, like super, super nervous, or did they kind of just get focused and do the tunnel vision? But you're saying that basically, you know, you basically turned around and took, uh, easier runways and easier situations, but then you started to kind of push the limits, start to experiment, start to try a little bit more challenging things. And so you kind of expanded that like your box of competency. So then you were more and more prepared and more confident for when you ended up going into some of these actually more challenging
Yeah,
runways.
that's right. I mean, the nerves would definitely be there on ones you hadn't been to before. There would have a little bit of nerviness, but I just kind of gives you a little bit of an edge sometimes, giving a little bit of adrenaline, I suppose. Not that you're like tracing adrenaline, you're not like an adrenaline junkie. You're not like looking for this kind of next hit sort of thing, because that seems like a crazy way to kind of do that kind of job. But it definitely helped you out, and but the more and more of it you did, the more routine it sort of became. And so landing on a, more dramatic looking runway, just like, oh, it's just, it's kind of very similar to that other one I did. And so you wouldn't have that quite so much. There would still be the odd one or two that would be like, okay, right, let's just focus on this because like this one's well shot and it's proper steep, or, really high elevation, or something along. There would be something potentially, but yeah, as I say, like a lot of the time, like it would just be quite routine actually, and you just follow what you know, and get on with it really.
Nice. So how long did it take you till you felt like you were pretty confident to fly up in the Highlands?
Yeah, that's a good question. Let me think. So yeah, it's a couple of years to Caravan, a year in kind of Borneo, Kalimantan, and then out to Papua. And I guess it was probably like a year or so within Papua of just like not doing the really crazy stuff, because again, like Susie was quite good. They kind of positioned you in places to allow you to kind of get better at that place and then move on to another challenging one and then another challenging one. So it was probably about like year 5 or 6 that I started to feel pretty comfortable with going anywhere really. And so that was the point where they would start sending me to like brand new airstrips who hadn't ever had an aircraft land on them before. And, then using all of that experience to then, make a safe landing at these kind of places. Um, but yeah, at no point was I like feeling like I was having to really push it. So I think that's probably how you end up crashing. Um, you know, as I say, like you kind of, as a bush pilot, you kind of know how when you need to do push it a little bit, and when you just need to back it off and go home. And that was always that kind of little knife edge that you would kind of tread, I suppose.
Yeah, I definitely think with a lot of sports, a lot of activities and stuff like that that are a little bit more on the extreme edge. Um, there's the there's the sink or swim, but then the reality is most stuff. The problem is if you go from 0 to 100, whether for in your case it would be death, but like for a lot of other stuff, people end up with a really negative experience, and then that makes them really scared, which makes when you're scared and nervous, you kind of lose all of that finesse and technique and stuff like that, and it makes you kind of stiff and lock up and worse. And so incremental, like pushing the boundaries, but pushing them a little bit by a little bit, it's definitely I think good advice for probably most things in life.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And to be honest, I probably still do that today with everything I do. Like I do a lot of rock climbing these days. And that's kind of very much like that. You kind of push it a bit, but not so much that you scare yourself. And yeah, I think it's not a bad way to live life, to be honest.
No, actually, it's funny. I did rock climb for about 10 or 11 years. And so what got you into the rock climbing? I wanted to ask that. And then are you more of a sport climber? Are you a trad climber? Are you boulderer? Like what do you like? I noticed that in your room you had like a training wall or something like that. I was like, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, yeah, that's out back actually. Yeah, that's when I came back to the UK, actually, the house I bought, I actually originally was going to build an aircraft. That was actually kind of one of my plans. I was going to get like a vans or something and build an aircraft. So I built an out back like a whole workshop for this thing. But I got so hooked on rock climbing because I live up near the Peak District here in the UK, which is kind of the epicenter of rock climbing in the UK, at least hard rock climbing. And yeah, for me, it's sport climbing. I love sport climbing because the physical side of it, you can obviously push much harder than with trad. I do a little bit of trad and I do a little bit of bouldering, but yeah, my primary focus is like outdoor sport climbing, where I can try real hard and know I'm not going to really be in too much danger, at least not in terms of like death or something. But yeah, I guess rupturing a pulley is probably the more likely one, or something like that. because you're just trying a bit too hard. But yeah, what I've done with the what was going to be where I was going to build an aircraft is I've turned it into like a gym basically for training for rock climbing because yeah, when I'm not flying airplanes, it's what I do basically.
Oh, nice. Well, and I don't know if you have this, but so over in, I know for us in the New River Gorge is one of them over in West Virginia, where even for the sport climbing, they we have to like stick clip the first because the first clip sometimes is 20 feet off the deck. And so I don't, is
Yeah.
it similar for you guys where that first clip for whatever reason is super high? So it's almost like free soloing for 20, well, because then you also got, once you clip it, um, yeah, it depends how far you got until the next clip, right? Because if you go up another
Yeah.
10 feet, you're still gonna hit the deck.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you kind of have to like, I mean, tri climbing does help with that kind of mental kind of math. You can kind of just go, how high am I going to go and how high will I fall? And so you can kind of mentally work that out. Like just bolting, I would say in UK is not too bad. It does vary wildly depending where you go. There are some places like that where it will be like 15, 20 feet high. Other ones, it'd be the opposite. It'd be like 5 feet off the ground. It's like, it's kind of pointless. Like I'm still going to hit the ground.
From here, yes.
We call that like a comfort clip. Like that's not really going to save you too much. Um, yeah, you just kind of have to mentally work it out in your head, like how much rope have I pulled up, and like how far is the next one away. And yeah, generally, I would say it's pretty good. It's pretty safe on the whole.
Have you taken any big whippers?
Oh yeah. If you don't fall off, you're not trying hard enough.
That is a very, very true. I think I want to say the most I've taken is like a 30 or 40 footer, but
Wow, I don't know if I take one that big. I don't know
not
really.
outside. 30, 40 foot was in the gym.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Outside, I don't think it's been ever more than maybe 15. But
Yeah, it's probably somewhere around there. Like, oh, I don't know actually. I probably have fallen like 10 meters. Yeah, I guess that probably is like 30 feet, isn't it? So yeah, maybe I've taken a few bigger ones than I think of.
yeah, if you skip one clip and with the stretch of the rope and then belay, I don't know
Yeah.
for you, but
Yeah,
when I took the big one, my belay went straight to the first clip. You just
yeah. If you take a big one, then yeah, they do get pulled up.
nice. So have you got to do that? Where have you got to do that around the world? I mean, I don't know if you. I mean, you're probably busy, but over there, you've also got what Krabi and Raleigh and stuff like that out in Asia. Have you been able to do any of that there, or are you just busy working when you're out there?
No, so I never actually climbed out in Asia. Once I moved back to the UK, it was I've kind of hung around Europe because it's not somewhere I've really lived in. Because as I say, I kind of grew up abroad, so it was kind of just cool to like check out Europe mostly. I climb a lot in Spain because the limestone there is just fantastic, and it's such a cool country actually. I really do like Spain a lot. So I've been quite lucky to climb all around there, and the Canary Islands as well, on Tenerife, and then Greece quite a bit, the Greek islands, and yeah, like Malta. Like yeah, we're quite lucky here in Europe. There's a huge variety of places to go. So yeah, I do enjoy kind of exploring it all. It's yeah, I don't know, it feels like every vacation I get to go somewhere new, which is cool.
That's pretty awesome. Yeah, I mean, my we were out sailing. My buddy, he ended up climbing in Kalymnos,
Yeah,
and
yeah, I was actually there earlier this year. That's we it's kind of got the nickname of like Climbers Disneyland. I don't know if your buddies mentioned that, but because it's so bizarre. It's like this tiny little Greek island, which basically has nothing but rock climbing, and then there's like flagship like Mammoth and Black Diamond and like these kind of big climbing brand stores, which would don't even exist in like big cities in like the Western world, but there they are in Klimnos because there's so many climbers there.
yeah, it's just it's like a mecca, and it's like it's super easy. Like you don't have to hike very far in to get to the climbs, and there's numerous areas. I mean, everything is. I think the climbing area is predominantly over what on the west side, right across from
Yeah, most
Talendo.
of it is. Yeah.
Um,
But yeah, and the grading is great because it's a good spread. So you can go with kind of people who are not very experienced climbers, and they can have a great time, and then really experienced climbers can have a great time because there's some super hard stuff there as well, and everything in between. So it's really cool.
nice, nice. Yeah, if you come out over to the East Coast, we have the Shawnagunks or the Gunks, and
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
they are sandbagged like crazy. So
Okay, that's like the Peak District in the UK.
yeah, it's like What?
They're like these old school kind of climbing areas. Yeah, sound back to hell.
Oh my God, yeah. It's just they wanted to make you feel like you were terrible.
Yeah,
um,
basically.
but okay, cool. So then, all right. So then, did you? I could have sworn when you were flying with the Catalina, did you get training with the CIA? Did I? No,
No, I don't think so. I
no.
don't
I don't
think
know
any of
where I
our
picked
guys
that
had anything
one
to
up.
do with that.
Where did you
Um,
learn flying that?
so the Catalina, so this is like a kind of quite a circular story, I suppose, because when I was in IT and like getting my private pilot license, I just remember one of the guys in the office was just like, "Hey, look, there's this like Catalina flying boat. It's on eBay. Like you can get a share of this thing, and you can fly it with a private pilot license." So like I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool," but
Wait, you
wasn't
could fly that
like,
with a private pilot?
yeah, you still can. To be
Oh
fair,
wow.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's a group owned aircraft. There's like 20 people who own the aircraft, some of whom are pilots, and some of whom just like having a cool old airplane. And but it must have planted a seed in the back of my head because when I went out to Asia then, and obviously was flying professionally, and actually earning pretty good money. Like Pilatus pilots got reasonably well paid because it's pretty dangerous what you were doing.
Yeah, can I ask what is like? I always wondered that because that and my other question will be on like family pay, etc. Like, what is like? How does that? Yeah. I mean, how does that work out there?
So we used to get like a daily rate, and so you get paid per day that you were out there. So, and generally you work like 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off. So if you wanted to earn a bit more, then work a bit more. If you wanted more vacation, then work a bit less and just take more time off, And so I kind of had quite a bit saved away. And I just remember thinking, oh yeah, there was that Catalina, wasn't there? Like, and so I looked and like, oh yeah, this maybe they got a share. So I kind of gave him a call and I was like, hey, like, just out of interest, is there any shares available? And the guy come back. He's like, yeah, actually, there's a share available right now if you're interested. I was like, oh, damn, I was hoping you'd say no. And so I got kind of chatting. I was like, yeah, screw it, let's just do it. You only live once, kind of thing. So I bought it from a hotel room in Jakarta, which was like £20,000, I think, something like that.
Wow.
Which is like
Uh,
I don't know, what's that like $28,000, $30,000, something like that.
Yeah. And so when you say for a share, are you in that with 10 other people, 20 other people, 100
Yeah,
other
like
people?
20 other people.
Okay.
So yeah, as I say, like I think about half of them are pilots. So there's like yeah, probably like 10, 12 pilots, and the rest of them just kind of people who like having um, a share of a cool old airplane. And so I came back to the UK on one of my vacations, and something learned to go fly at Catalina, basically. So again, we started as a co-pilot, which I did, and they use it for air shows to do to generate a bit of revenue for the aircraft, and obviously to show it off to other people and just show people how cool this thing is. And it does them all over Europe, not just in the UK. And I was quite quickly moved to the left seat, which is quite cool. I think because of what I used to do with the bush flying, my hand flying abilities pretty good. Um,
Especially with the Pilatus, right? Because
yeah,
that's a very handsy plane, right?
yeah, for sure. It's yeah, it'll sort of flatter you, but it'll punish you if you don't do it right. Um, but the Catalina is kind of not like that. The Catalina is actually just really difficult to fly. It's got no directional stability. So whilst the rudder is reasonably effective, because of that huge wingspan, that huge asymmetric wingspan, it's like a glider. You bank it left or right. If you just roll it, it just slips sideways. It won't turn. So you need loads of rudder to like coordinate the turns. But obviously flying a tailwheel, I was quite comfortable with that. So I got in the groove with the Catalina quite quickly. And so, yeah, they pushed me to the left seat pretty quick. And yeah, I spent quite a few years kind of flying that thing around on vacations, doing air shows, and kind of display flying. And I loved it. It was fun times. And obviously water, landing out on the water, which is something you get to do. And that's very different, from landing on from the land to learning to fly seaplane. And yeah, that's my first ever seaplane was a Catalina.
Okay,
Um,
that was I was gonna ask that. I was gonna say, like, did you go get like float plane training or seaplane
no,
training, anything like that? No, that was Catalina was the first. And now, have
straight
you
on.
done float plane since? Like, and
No,
what's the big?
actually, funnily enough, that's the only one I've ever flown. It's the only seaplane or float plane I've ever flown, actually. So.
So what's the big? What would you say is like a really big difference that you have to learn with landing a float plane versus? some of the other.
So like the number one thing is the attitude, the landing attitude. So um an aircraft with wheels, like it doesn't care particularly like what attitude you're coming in at because the wheel touches the runway and then yeah, you can just sort of sort it out. But a float plane or a flying hull, you've got to touch down in that planing attitude because when you touch that water, the whole hull or the floats, whatever it happens to be, touches the water at whatever angle you've come in at. And if you come in too steep an angle, you're going to skip like a stone, and then it might just you know nose in porpoise as they call it. And if you land too flat, it might get sucked under. So you just have to get that attitude bang on, and you don't flare. And that's the hardest thing in the world is to not flare the aircraft. You get that attitude set, you get the speed set, and then you just let it hit the water.
So you're
Um,
basically not, you're not doing a stall landing. You're just kind of
you're
coming
not,
out like a
yeah,
power.
you Yeah, you're just coming in under power, under speed, at the attitude you want to, and just once it touches the water, then you kind of just like holding it in the attitude, reduce the powers, keep holding the attitude until it falls off the step, and then yeah, then you're in the water. So yeah, that's the most tricky thing with the whole thing is just getting that picture in your mind as to what that looks like,
And
and,
now,
and not flaring.
yeah, I mean and then do you have any like, I think with the planes that you guys were flying, the Pilatus, you have, like you said, you have the wheel on the back. So, but do you end up ever having any issues where with those, I think you also have a little bit of concern with the prop and stuff, right? And is that the same thing with the float plane? Like you really have to, you're saying the attitude, but you have to make sure that you don't come in too nose heavy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The Pilatus actually is quite good. I know some tailwheel aircraft are a bit more nose heavy. The Pilatus is very aft heavy, so you were highly unlikely to nose it over. Even with really hitting the brakes hard, if you landed somewhere, you need to stop it quickly. In fact, I'm not aware of any porters that have ever nosed over, really. I guess unless you were really light, then your CFG is going to be a bit further forward. But certainly with load in the back, yeah, you could hammer the brakes and it wouldn't nose over. Just almost impossible. But other tailwheels, yeah, you got to be a bit careful with that, especially these kind of lighter ones. You got like a super cub with a maybe bigger engine on the front there, and it's just you on board, a little bit of fuel, then you hit the brakes. Yeah, you probably could nose that over. And I think actually those big air tractors, I think again because they got the big hoppers in the front, they can nose over too. But it varies by aircraft. But yeah, with seaplanes, it's all on that attitude. It's not so much the CFG will have some effect, but it's more on like just getting that hull, that boat shape, either the floats or the flying hull, touching the water at the right attitude. And yeah, that takes practice. And yeah, not flaring when you touch the water. That's the trickiest thing because if you flare, then you can screw up the attitude. And yeah,
That would be, so now the other thing is, so you have with airplanes, obviously you have air traffic control. What do you do for a seaplane? Like, how do you like, what if boats, like, how do you make sure there's no boats in the way or?
yeah. Well, I mean, that's it. It's very much you start getting into like rules of the sea, and actually kind of as part of the license, you have to kind of understand the rules between all the various craft on the water. Like it's sort of the same as airplanes. Like gliders, which don't have an engine, have priority over powered aircraft, and the same on the water. Like a sailboat would have bigger priority than a powerboat or a seaplane. And yeah, I mean, there are instances where I think things have gone wrong. I say, like some of these kind of busy harbors around the world, you kind of sometimes see a powerboat go straight across a runway,
Oh
and a
yeah, I don't.
seaplane kind of hits them. And whose fault that is, it's kind of open to debate, I suppose, depending on which one of perspective you want to look at it. But yeah, ideally, you should make sure your landing run is clear, obviously, and make sure nothing's going to suddenly come into it. And just be predictable is the biggest thing. Is don't do anything sudden or weird with a seaplane, because obviously a lot of boat users probably aren't very familiar with what an aircraft is going to do. So just be predictable is probably the biggest thing, so that they can kind of generally keep out of your way.
Okay, yeah. I mean, yeah, the only reason I thought about that is I also have my captain's license and I captain like catamaran charter boats and stuff. And I just know that when the boating world, like everybody, like eh, the incompetence on the water, I mean, people may have their whatever boater license. I mean, I know for us, like to get your personal watercraft over here in the States, like You basically go to like a West Marine, you answer 50 questions that is like, "What's your name?" And you end up
Yeah, okay.
and you get it. So, like, the average person who's out, like, regularly boating on the weekend, oh my god, it's unbelievable. They don't all crash into each other. But yeah, from a professional level, obviously, like, you know the rules. But I mean, if I don't know about you, but like, if you went around and asked people like, what are the priority rules and stuff like that, I highly doubt them. Nine out
Highly
of
unlikely, yeah. I mean, you've basically just got to look out for yourself, really, and yeah, as I say, just try and just be predictable, and try, yeah, try not to do anything too crazy, and yeah, if you obviously if you're landing and taking off, just make sure your run is clear, so that you don't have a boat like coming quite close to you. If there is a boat really close by, then just kind of probably wait for them to do whatever the hell it is they're trying to do, and then go, as opposed to just assuming they've seen you, and even if you do have the right of way, because you are supposed to landing and taking off, you're supposed to have priority. But yeah, as you say, people on the water, who knows
yeah.
what they're going to do.
So I guess, so what's your future plans? So what's
Yeah, that's a good
what are you
question.
excited about? What are you getting into?
So funny you mentioned sailing, actually. Um, so yeah, at the moment I fly a Pilatus PC-12, like a corporate version of the Porter. It's like a I call it like a Range Rover of the skies because you can kind of land it on dirt and stuff if you want, but it's pressurized and it's got leather seats in the back and it's quite nice. I fly around Europe in this thing. So I do that professionally. Maybe go fly a jet one day. I don't know. I've never flown a jet before, so that might be something interesting to do. But yeah, sailing, that's something I've started to get interested in. Because obviously growing up in the Middle East, I was quite used to sailing dinghies and things. And I actually did a course early this year in Tenerife on a 40-foot Genoa, actually, Sun Odyssey. And I was like, yeah, this is pretty damn cool. This is definitely something, because again, I'm quite a nomadic person. So yeah, once I kind of got into a position, I think it'd be quite cool to rent the house out, get myself something like that, and just disappear around the world for a few years and see how we go.
Yeah, actually, so I mean, the the understanding, I mean, literally a sail is a wing inverted. So I mean, you definitely would already start with a substantial amount of knowledge on just how a wing operates and how to, you'd be definitely ahead on the sailing part. But it is like, I mean, if you love traveling, and it's just an incredible way to travel and see the world. And so it sounds like, did you get, like, for us, I think it would be like your ASA stuff like that. For you guys, I don't know if it's under
Yeah,
the
so the what have we got? We've got the ROIA, Royal Yachting Association, which is weirdly used all around Europe, actually, I discovered, which I thought was just a British thing, but apparently quite a few other nations have adopted it. And yeah, day skipper is the kind of the standard one. And that's like a week-long course with a bit of a test at the end and covers some basic stuff like basic navigation and basics of like rules of the sea and stuff. And yeah, how to operate a sailboat and how to move the mainsails and everything around. And you can take tag-ons for that. You can get, I think day skip is the most basic one, and then it kind of goes on to like what do they call it? Like is it yacht master or coastal skipper? And as I said, there's kind of other kind of ones where you're navigating for bigger distances and going further away from the shore and that kind of stuff. But like in UK, really, you don't need anything. There's no legal requirement to have any of this stuff. You can literally just if you buy yourself a yacht, then crack on, basically. um, and see how you get on. But I guess if you've not got much experience, it's probably a good idea to get some kind of training on this sort of stuff.
Oh,
Um,
definitely. Well, and
I mean,
also, I mean,
sailing wise, like I'm fine. Like as I say, like I grew up in the Middle East, and like Dad was really into dinghy sailing. We used to have Hobie cats, so I got quite good at sailing those kind of things. Yachts obviously a bit different, especially like moving around harbors with under motor and things. That takes a bit of practice, but yeah, I definitely can see myself to getting into that in the not too distant future.
yeah, I mean, that's honestly, I would say, getting into, like, really performance and everything like that, it gets much more technical. But the big thing is, honestly, especially with the med, like in the BVIs, the US Virgins, like, you can get on mooring balls and stuff like that, and it's pretty easy. But in the med, you've got like med mooring, which when
Yeah,
the
they go
winds
stern in.
yeah, it's stern in, and when the winds are blowing, and then in particularly like Greece and stuff like that, you have to do like a 3-point anchoring. So you have to drop your anchor, you have to back up, and then you actually got to tie off to like the rocks and the trees and stuff like that.
Yeah, I've
So
seen that. Yeah,
so it definitely gets I would that's where I think more of the skill comes in, or a little
Yeah,
more of the,
definitely. Like sailing on the ocean's not that hard. At least there's not
not
too many things to hit.
exactly, exactly. So, but yeah, man, I really wanted to thank you for coming on. I think you definitely have a super interesting and exciting life going on, and so you're going to be doing more of the yachting and the sailing. You're flying the plane thing. No going back out to Papua.
No, like as I always tell people, like when I've kind of done something, then I move on and I do something else, you know. So,
Yeah,
I did the IT thing, got done with that, moved on, did the kind of Papua crazy flying, moved on from that, kind of doing the corporate stuff around Europe. I'm probably going to move on from that at some point. Rock climbing, I don't know. Like I haven't moved on from that. I've been doing that for a while now. I love that.
I hear you.
Um, how long have I been doing that now? 6 years. And that's just, yeah, that just gets better and better, to be honest. I've got like a little camper van as well, which I spend a lot of time in, especially this time of year. Summer here in Europe, I can just live out of that for, weeks at an end. Quickly drive down to the airfield, do a trip around Europe, get back in the van, go back, do more rock climbing.
Nice.
And yeah, with the Catalina stuff, again, I did like 6, 7 years with that. I've actually been invited back these days. I actually do instructing and examining on that now. So that's like a whole new thing for me, which is quite cool. I'm kind of teaching people and then testing them on it. And then, yeah, sailing, that's going to be, I think that'll be a thing quite soon, I reckon.
Nice. Well, we'll have to chat and maybe touch up on some, catch up on some sailing and stuff like that because I'm doing a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, sounds
Um,
cool.
but I wanted to thank you for coming on, and I want to make sure everybody definitely check out his book. It's a Flying in Shangri-La, and it's by Matt Dearden. It's, I mean, just an awesome, awesome book. Tons of tales, like you said, close encounters, and all the stuff you had from blacking out and whatnot. So it's definitely, I think it's one of those books that you pick it up, you probably finish it in a few days, right? It's it's
Yeah,
um
I think most people kind of just don't put it down. It's one of those kind of page turner books, I suppose. So yeah, a lot of people take on vacation and they're like, "Damn, man, I read it so fast. I didn't want it to end so quick."
yeah. So definitely check it out. I think Amazon and
Yeah, it's the usual places. Yeah, Amazon's probably the easiest one, to be honest.
perfect. Well, I thank you so much for coming on,
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
and good luck with everything. And we'll chat in the near future.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
Take care. Eros Expeditions is a sailing yacht charter company excited to give their customers the most unique and amazing vacation where they can travel to their favorite destinations in luxury while experiencing amazing food and culture with family and friends. You get to travel with no crowds and have the flexibility to move at a relaxed pace. The yachts have a full kitchen on board with dining for 8 inside and out and are kept to a limited number of guests, making sure the experience is relaxing and stress-free. If you're looking to kick back and enjoy the warm, clear waters of the Caribbean, then the Bahamas, the British Virgin Islands, the U.S. Virgin Islands, St. Martin, and St. Bart's may be right for you. If you're more interested in culture, ancient cities, gastronomy, wineries, and history, then Croatia, Greece, Italy, and France are perfect choices. If you're looking for more exotic destinations, then definitely check out French Polynesia, Mexico, and Thailand. The company began with a love for traveling the world, experiencing new and exciting places, and sharing them with amazing people. Getting to combine them all with sailing, snorkeling, fishing, paddleboarding, and scuba diving makes for the perfect vacation experience. Book your reservation now to experience travel like no other at erosexpeditions.com or andrewsabia1 at gmail.com. Links in the description below.